My name is Jake Whitmore, and I used to believe love was something I could schedule, something I could pencil between client meetings and deadlines, something neat, measured. I'm a graphic designer based in Chicago, living in a studio apartment above a bakery that always smells like cinnamon before dawn. I used to think that love, like design, was about control. Then I met Cole Merrick, and everything I thought I understood unraveled. It started on a rainy Thursday. I ducked into a small bar near Wicker Park to get out of the storm, soaked to the knees and irritated with the world. He was there behind the counter, sleeves rolled up, towel slung over his shoulder, and a slight smirk playing on his lips. He handed me a napkin before I even said a word. "Rough day?" he asked, voice calm, a touch amused. I nodded. Design client wanted their logo to be edgy but soft. No idea what that means. He laughed, low and warm, and something about the sound made me want to keep talking. His name was Cole Merrick. 30, maybe 31. Dark hair, always just a little messy. There was something about him that felt lived in, like an old book with dog-eared pages. He didn't overshare, but he listened like every word you said mattered. Over the next few weeks, I found myself stopping by the bar more often, not for the drinks, but for him. We'd talk about music, old movies, cities we wanted to visit but hadn't. He liked quiet places. I liked the way he filled silence without saying a thing. He never talked much about his past. I pieced together fragments. A long-ago move from Maine, an estranged father, a relationship that ended badly. His eyes got distant whenever someone mentioned trust. Still, he never shut me out. We'd walk home in the early hours after his shift, coffee in hand, shoulders brushing, but never touching too long. There was a carefulness to him, as if too much closeness might crack something inside. I told myself we were just friends, that it was all in my head, the way my chest tightened when he laughed, how I'd catch myself staring at the curve of his jaw when he wasn't looking. But the truth lingered between us like static. I wanted him, more than I'd wanted anyone before. The first time I saw him outside the bar, it was different. We went for a hike up at Starved Rock, just the two of us. No distractions, no familiar corners to retreat into. Somewhere along the trail, he paused at a lookout, wind tugging at his hair, and said, "Sometimes I think I'm meant to be alone. People get too close, and I disappear." I didn't answer right away. I was afraid to say the wrong thing. Afraid I'd echo his silence. "You don't have to run," I said finally. He looked at me, eyes darker than the sky behind him, unreadable. Then he smiled, just barely, and nodded like he wanted to believe me. After that day, something shifted. He started texting me songs late at night, ones with lyrics that said what he wouldn't. He came to my place once, unannounced, just to sit on the floor and talk while I worked. No explanations, just presence. Still, there were moments when he pulled away. Days without a reply. Sudden distance that didn't match the closeness we'd shared the day before. I told myself not to read into it, that everyone had shadows. But my heart kept slipping through the cracks. One night, we stood outside my building, the city buzzing around us. The moon hung low, and the space between us felt unbearably loud. I wanted to tell him everything, that I couldn't keep pretending this was casual, that his silences hurt more than he knew. But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I said, "You're important to me." He blinked slowly. The way he looked at me then, like I'd handed him something fragile, made me hope he felt the same. But all he said was, "You don't know me like you think you do, Jake." Maybe I didn't. Maybe that was true, but I wanted to. He turned and walked off into the night, leaving behind nothing but questions and the faint scent of smoke from his jacket. I stood there, heart thudding in my chest, uncertain if I just crossed a line or if I was still standing behind one. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a story about wanting someone. It was a story about holding on to something that kept slipping away. Cole wasn't just a chapter. I wanted him to be the whole book. But you can't write love with someone who's still editing their past. Still, I wasn't ready to close the cover. Not yet. It was a Wednesday night, cooler than usual for early summer. The bar was half empty, music low, and the city outside seemed to hold its breath. I hadn't planned to see Cole that night. I just finished a frustrating client call and wandered over out of habit. He was there behind the bar, sleeves rolled up like always, his hair damp at the edges like he'd just stepped out of the rain. "You look like someone who needs a distraction," he said, pouring me a drink before I even ordered. "I could use something stronger than distraction," I muttered, sinking into the stool. "Preferably something that erases the past week." He chuckled, but there was tension in it, tight, restrained. His hands moved smoothly, but his shoulders were stiff, his eyes flicking between me and the door like he was waiting for something, or someone, to change his mind. We talked for a while, though less than usual. He didn't fill in the blanks like he normally did. Instead, there were long silences, the kind that usually meant something was coming. He offered me a second drink, then another. I should have stopped after the first, but I didn't want to leave. Not when the space between us felt heavy with everything unspoken. "You ever feel like you're balancing on a wire?" he asked suddenly, leaning against the bar. "Like you take one step forward, and you're not sure if you'll fall or finally feel something real?" I nodded slowly. "All the time." Cole's eyes found mine. "Yeah, I thought maybe you'd get that." He closed the bar early, so it was a slow night and the boss wouldn't care. We walked the 5 blocks to his apartment without speaking, the silence between us charged, but not uncomfortable. He let me in with a small gesture, like he wasn't entirely sure what he was doing but didn't want to stop himself. His apartment was small but clean, full of dim lighting and records leaning against the walls. He offered me a drink, whiskey, neat, and I accepted, even though my head already felt soft around the edges. We sat on the floor, backs against the couch. The lights were low, music faint. Something instrumental played in the background, slow and melancholic. I don't remember the exact moment it shifted. 1 second, we were talking about nothing, his childhood dog, a movie he hated, and then he went quiet. He turned to me, eyes locked on mine, and his hand brushed against my knee like a question. I didn't move. I didn't answer. Then, suddenly, he kissed me. It wasn't soft. It wasn't slow. It was hungry, immediate, like he was trying to erase something inside himself. His hand was on my neck, thumb grazing my jaw, the air between us gone in an instant. I froze, not out of fear, but shock. I'd imagined this moment so many times, but this version felt different. He wasn't asking, he was taking. For a second, I let it happen. For a second, I kissed him back. But then he pulled away first, breath ragged, eyes unfocused. "I shouldn't have done that," he muttered, already standing up, pacing like he couldn't be near me anymore. "Cole." "No," he cut me off, voice sharp. "Don't. I'm not. I didn't mean to. God, I don't even know what I meant." I stood up slowly. "You don't get to do that. Not after everything." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I thought I could keep things simple with you. I thought I could just be your friend. But you're not safe, Jake. You're not just anyone." That hurt more than I expected. "I never asked you to be safe," I said, softer now. "I just wanted you to be honest." He didn't answer. He just turned away, shoulders hunched like the weight of whatever he was carrying had doubled. I left without another word. Not because I wanted to, but because staying felt like begging. Outside, the air was colder than it should have been. The streets were empty, and everything looked sharper under the streetlights, like the world had turned up the contrast. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to replay every second. The kiss had been real. So had the way he pushed me away right after. Like I was a door he couldn't bear to open, but couldn't quite close either. It was the moment everything changed, when desire blurred into confusion and closeness shattered into distance. I wanted to believe it meant something. I wanted to believe he did too. But all I had was silence, and the echo of his lips on mine, a memory already starting to hurt. The silence that followed was louder than any goodbye. Days passed, then a week. My texts went unanswered. The call I placed after the second day rang until it met his voicemail, his voice distant and generic now, like he'd already decided to vanish. At first, I told myself he was just sorting things out, that maybe he needed space, that maybe the kiss scared him more than it scared me. But eventually, denial gave way to clarity. Cole wasn't coming back, not in the way I knew him. I replayed that night over and over, every second frozen in my memory like a frame from a film. I kept thinking if I examined it closely enough, I'd find the moment it all fractured. The touch of his hand on my jaw, the panic in his eyes, the way he pulled away like I had burned him. Every detail whispered the same truth. He was never mine, no matter how much I wanted him to be. One late afternoon, I walked by the bar. I wasn't trying to see him. At least, that's what I told myself. But there he was, behind the counter, laughing with a customer like nothing had happened. Like the night we shared was a flicker he'd already forgotten. He looked lighter somehow, or maybe I just imagined it. I stepped inside, not to talk, just to be close enough to remember what it had felt like before everything. He noticed me, his smile faltering for half a second before returning like it had never left. "Hey," he said like I was someone he used to know. That single word was a dagger. "Hey," I replied and walked out. He didn't follow. Later that week, I learned from a mutual acquaintance that he was seeing someone again. Her name was Madison. They dated once, years ago. Now, they were apparently reconnecting. The word stung in ways I didn't anticipate. I kept imagining him with her, soft moments that should have been ours repurposed for someone else. And maybe that wasn't fair. Maybe he had every right to move on, or backward, or whatever direction he was choosing. But it didn't make the betrayal any less sharp. The worst part wasn't that he kissed me. It was that he made me believe it meant something. In the days that followed, I fell into routines that felt mechanical. Work, home, sleep, repeat. I stopped walking past the bar. I deleted his contact, though I still remembered the number. I even tried going on a date with someone new, a quiet guy named Russ who liked poetry and had kind eyes. But the moment he reached for my hand, all I could feel was the absence of Cole. One night, I found myself scrolling through old messages. The digital trail of what we had, playful banter, late-night song recommendations, those half-their admissions he never quite voiced. It felt like reading someone else's story, someone more hopeful, someone who hadn't yet learned that not all confessions come with closure. I kept asking myself if I'd missed the signs, if maybe I had projected my feelings onto someone who was never capable of returning them. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the full story. Cole had felt something real, but he'd buried it the moment it surfaced, too scared to face it, or maybe too broken to let it grow. A part of me wanted to hate him. It would have been easier, cleaner, but I didn't. I couldn't. Because underneath the disappointment and the ache, there was still a trace of the boy who once stood with me under city lights, saying nothing and meaning everything. Still, love isn't a theory you can revise. It's not a project you can fix with effort. It either stands on truth, or it collapses under the weight of what's left unsaid. That winter, I took down the sketches I'd made of him, doodles in the margins of notebooks, quick portraits I'd never shown him. They weren't dramatic or detailed, just glimpses. His side profile, his hands, the slope of his shoulders. I tucked them into a drawer, not ready to throw them out, but no longer needing them in sight. I stopped writing texts I wouldn't send. I stopped rehearsing what I'd say if he ever apologized. And though I still felt him in the quiet moments, his laughter in old playlists, his memories stitched into certain streets, I started to breathe easier. Not because I'd stopped loving him, but because I had finally accepted that some people aren't meant to stay, no matter how tightly you hold them. Still, sometimes when the night is especially quiet and the city feels smaller than it should, I wonder if he ever thinks of me. If he remembers the way my voice sounded when I told him he mattered. Or if I'd become just another silence he learned to live with. Grief isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, like the empty space on a couch where someone used to sit, or the silence after a song you both love stops playing. After Cole, I stopped expecting closure to arrive with clarity. I stopped waiting for an apology that would never come. What remained was the ache of almost, a love half-lived, a future we nearly built. But life, in its slow and unflinching way, continued. And so did I. I started running again. Not far, just around the neighborhood. The movement helped, like I was chasing parts of myself I'd let him take. I changed my route to avoid the bar. I didn't want the risk of catching glimpses of him pretending to be fine while I was still trying to figure out what fine even meant. In the quiet hours of the morning, before the city fully woke, I wrote. Not to him, but about him. Pieces of memory poured onto the page. Our first hike, the sound of his laugh, the exact moment I realized he had never been mine to keep. The words weren't bitter. They weren't sweet either. They just were. Honest. Messy. Necessary. My therapist, someone I finally gathered the courage to see, said it wasn't love I'd lost, but the illusion that it was ever mutual. That hit hard, because in my mind, Cole had loved me, even if he didn't know how to hold it, even if he had buried it beneath fear and confusion. But maybe that's not love. Maybe love, the real kind, isn't just about feeling. It's about choosing. And he didn't choose me. One night, months later, I got a message from an unknown number. Just 2 words, "I'm sorry." I stared at it for a long time, heartbeat heavy in my chest. I didn't respond. Not out of anger, but because I had nothing left to offer. He had his chance, and he let it pass. Whatever that message meant, regret, guilt, maybe even affection, it was too late. Apologies don't always mean you go back. Sometimes they're just acknowledgments of the damage. I thought about deleting it, but I didn't. I let it sit there, unread but not ignored. A reminder that I wasn't crazy, that something had been real, even if it ended badly. Russ, the quiet guy I'd gone on one awkward date with months ago, reached out again. He asked if I wanted to get coffee, just as friends. I almost said no. I was tired of hoping, but something about his message felt light. No expectations, no weight. Just kindness. We met at a bookstore cafe downtown. He remembered what I liked in my coffee. We talked for hours, mostly about things that didn't hurt. It wasn't electric, but it was calm. And after the storm I'd been through, calm felt revolutionary. Over time, I stopped measuring new people against Cole. I stopped chasing that broken high, the thrill of wanting someone you were never sure would stay. Instead, I began looking for something else: consistency, gentleness, truth. One morning, while watching the sunrise from my fire escape, I realized I didn't miss Cole anymore. Not really. I missed the idea of him. The version I constructed in my head, made from glimpses and hopes and wishful thinking. The real Cole, the one who ran, who hid behind a kiss, who left without a word. I had let him go, and I was better for it. That experience didn't break me. It refined me, made me more cautious with my heart. Yes, but also more aware of its strength. I had loved someone deeply, even when it wasn't returned in kind. I had stood in the ruins of what almost was and still found the courage to rebuild. Sometimes, late at night, I still think of him. Not with pain, but with a quiet kind of gratitude. Because loving Cole taught me what I truly want, what I truly deserve. Not someone who loves me only in fragments, but someone who stands beside me without flinching, who sees the whole of me and stays. I don't know where Cole is now, or if he ever figured out how to stop running. But I hope in some way he found peace. I hope he learned to sit with himself in the quiet and not be afraid of what he heard. We were a chapter, not the book. A lesson, not the end. And me? I'm still writing my story. One that no longer starts with longing, but with truth. One where the next time someone reaches for my hand, I won't be wondering who they'll become when the lights go out. Some love stories teach you how to stay. Others, like his, teach you how to leave. And both, in their own way, are worth remembering.